Chike was a 35-year-old Nigerian man. He lives in the outskirts of Lagos in a rented 3-bedroom apartment. He works a 9 to 5 job in a company located in Lagos Island. The job was interesting and the pay good enough to give him, his wife, and 2 children reasonable comfort. Chike was married to his heartthrob, Tosin. They have been dating since their secondary school days, and their love affair was top-notch. Nobody knowing them back in their university days will ever think that they would ever have any form of misunderstanding in life, not to talk of a complete breakup in the relationship. But like they say, man proposes, but God disposes. Even before they finally got married, those who knew them hardly believed that they were not yet married. The bond between them was that strong. But at times, things happen and no one seems to know why. The marriage was, however, blessed with 2 lovely children. Tosin, his wife, was 30. She was a very loving and caring wife and mother. She was always looking out for Chike and would not eat until Chike was there to eat with her. She was working in one of the commercial banks around town. Even though she had a very demanding job schedule, she ensured that her family was properly taken care of. They have a family friend called Mercy, who lives in another part of town. She was a close relative of Chike, as they came from the same town. Hence, she was very close to the couple. How would anyone in their right minds begin to think that somebody like Mercy would eventually become an arrowhead of the breakup of this family? Or should we call it a beneficiary of the breakup of a family she once called her own? But again, looking back at the whole situation, if she hadn't been a beneficiary of such breakup, someone else may have snatched the opportunity. Experience has shown that there are 1,001 other young women out there who would have gladly welcomed the opportunity so offered. After their university education, Chike and Tosin were to go do their 1-year national service, but they decided to get married before the service year. They eventually did some quiet wedding, as their purse was not large enough to carry out any outlandish wedding ceremony. Before they got married, they were scared about how they were going to raise money to carry out an elaborate wedding. They have often seen society wedding being held here and there. Most of their friends who wedded close to theirs often complained about how expensive weddings are becoming then. Many of such people have had to borrow a lot in the course of such weddings. But between themselves, they vowed that they were not going to get into such debts just for personal aggrandizement. It was in the course of their research over their small budgets that they discovered that weddings can still be done on a lean budget. Based on their research findings, they were eventually able to carry out a wedding without breaking a bank or borrowing. It was all a function of the tastes of the individuals concerned. Since then, they had continued to live according to their budgets, and life did not become too challenging. They were eventually blessed with 2 kids. Both of them were lucky enough to secure a 9 to 5 job immediately after their service year. They worked very hard and were able to live a reasonable lifestyle when their incomes were pulled together. With time, life started becoming a little more challenging, especially after the arrival of their kids. Things began to look a little bad when Tosin was transferred to another branch of their office a little further from their house. She had to start waking up a little earlier so as to meet up with her domestic commitments and also get to the office in good time. The situation was becoming too challenging for her, but she just does not want to complain. She had always wanted to be the good wife that she had always been. She would have loved to hire a help, but she had had what some of these helps could do to children in a family as busy away from home as her own. Once upon a time, she had been told a story of how one of those house helps had used sleeping pills to quieten a baby that was very hyperactive. It was not until the baby became very ill and at the point of giving up that the very busy parents discovered what was going on. It took the intervention of God for the baby to get back to life. After the house help was interviewed about her terrible actions towards the child, it became obvious that the girl does not understand the consequences of her actions. For her, she just wanted a stubborn child to give her enough time to have her own peace. Not only this one, she had also had firsthand a number of unpalatable experiences of other parents and friends who have had nasty encounter with such helps. She will not forget the experience that was narrated recently about one house help that wanted to poison the madam of the house so as to take over the husband. It took the grace of God for the woman to find out and send her packing. But that was after severe damages had been done to the relationship between the husband and wife. While she was busy thinking about all of that, she failed to notice the small flame that was gradually taking hold on the dry grasses in her very backyard. First, it was Mercy. She was a very beautiful lady of sorts. She lives a few bus stops away from their home. She was a very modest woman, but a very friendly and approachable woman. But the type no reasonable woman will want to let loose in their house. Tosin had seen this trait in her, but had always seen her and called her sister-in-law, since she came from the same town with Chike. Tosin had therefore seen her as a member of the family. Tosin had even been discussing some of her secrets with Mercy, not knowing that she was playing into the hands of an enemy. But she was not to realize so until very late. She had been friends with Kemi for a very long time. Kemi was very beautiful and flashy. She likes the fast lane and does not hide her taste from anyone who gets close to her. She eventually got married to one older man who kept her outside his home as part of his many concubines. But Kemi was not bothered. All she wanted was the money, and she was getting that from the man. Initially, Tosin was comfortable with her modest life with Chike. She did not look the way of Kemi because her parents brought her up in such a way that she could appreciate humble and small beginnings. But things were beginning to change as she observed Kemi's lifestyle. Eventually, she bought into the idea and Chike never knew peace since then. She first started with the idea of employing a house help. Tosin began to complain for the first time that things were getting too strenuous for her and they should get a help. Chike was the one who had earlier suggested that they get a help, but Tosin had then refused. She cited many of the sad stories she had heard about house helps. They had therefore stepped down the issue. At present, the times have changed and they were no longer in a position to afford such a luxury. When Chike reminded her of their low financial position, she flared up and the whole thing ended up in disagreement. Chike was shocked by the attitude which Tosin exhibited over this small matter. He was shocked because he had never had Tosin talk to him in such a condescending manner. But he was not that bothered, hoping that it was just a passing phase. But that was not to say that they don't usually have their disagreements over issues. But there was that thing about this one that raised a red flag in Chike's mind. But then, he decided to ignore the whole thing. With time, Tosin began to make a number of demands on Chike. These demands were unusual. Tosin had not been making such demands before. It eventually began to cause additional strain on the relationship. When Chike decided to make Tosin see reasons why their relationship was at an all-time low, she would not want to see reasons to make amends. Meanwhile, Tosin continued to go deeper and deeper into her friendship with Kemi. She began to copy a lifestyle that she was not brought up with, a lifestyle that she cannot maintain. Within a brief period, their relationship, which some people called heaven sent, began to develop serious cracks. What exactly was the problem? Tosin began to demand things that were beyond Chike's means. She began to copy Kemi. In doing that, she refused to realize that Chike was a man of modest means. It was not like she does not know Chike's means of livelihood. She was just piling pressure, and her requests continued to cause friction in her home. At one point, they lived in the same room, but were not at talking terms with one another. Chike could not believe what was happening to his marriage and decided to seek third-party assistance. But after some consideration, he thought against it. It happened that they both attend the same church. He wanted to table the matter before the church, but he later told himself that such action may not yield the desired result. The church can only advise, they cannot enforce. So he decided to confide in Mercy only. Little did he know that he was getting himself into a bigger mess. Mercy was of a marriageable age. She had been sitting and waiting for the right man to come and knock on her door, but they have so far refused to show up. When therefore on that fateful day, Chike began to narrate his ordeal to her, she began to scheme. She realized that Chike was not finding life easy anymore at home. But instead of trying to wade in and settle matters, she took advantage of an already bad situation. That is what I have been waiting for, she thought to herself. If Tosin is tired of Chike, then she was here to give him succour. He eventually began to give Chike the type of attention that he was missing at home over the past 2 years. Unfortunately for Chike, the love and care that had been denied him for some time now was eventually found in the bosom of Mercy. Back at home, Chike could not afford the luxury demanded by Tosin. Their disagreement grew wider and wider. Chike began to stay more and more away from home. Tosin was not to be bothered about what he does outside. As far as she was concerned, Chike was no longer the dream man. He could no longer afford to give her what she wanted. He could go to hell was her response to the situation. She was not bothered and began to behave as if some devil had blinded her sense of thought. The locals have a saying that a dog that must get lost does not hear the whistle of its owner. So Tosin threw away all senses of good judgment and drove Chike into the waiting arms of Mercy. Mercy was a lady in her late 20s to early 30s. She was very industrious and hustled enough to live a very comfortable life. From all indications, Mercy was a stunning beauty. It was therefore impossible to really tell why the right men were not coming to knock on her door. She eventually approached a medicine man who told her what to do once the man she likes approaches. When eventually Chike began to show some stress in their marital home, she decided to strike. It happened that she had been eyeing Chike all this while. Chike was a very caring and loving man. She saw this trait in him in the way he handles Tosin and the children. She had all this while not really shown interest in Chike, even though she admires him a lot. She never really wanted to be the one that would cause a breakup in the marriage. So she had largely stayed away from Chike's life. But when it became obvious that the marriage had crashed, or so to say, she decided to take the initiative and bring Chike close to her. She does not want to see Chike end up in the hands of another woman. So she had to cash in on the situation. She gradually began to use the formula which was given to her by the medicine man on Chike. She even had to add her own feminine touch to get Chike to divert his full attention to her. Whenever Chike comes, she will prepare some of the best food she knew he liked, introduce a little portion of the formula, and give to Chike to eat. Chike will gladly eat and feel very comfortable with Mercy and her environment. Mercy had had a number of other men come to her and showed love. But somewhere along the line, they had suddenly stopped coming. She had never stopped wondering what was really responsible. This time she told herself this lover boy would certainly not be allowed to escape like the others. She therefore tightened her grip so much on Chike, to the extent that Chike began to stay with her more than he stays at home. Eventually, Chike picked a few of his belongings from his house, left Tosin and the children behind, and went to live with Mercy. By the time Tosin realized what was happening, Chike had already settled fully with Mercy. Within a short time, Mercy became pregnant and gave birth to a child. That was when Tosin came back to her senses. By then, Chike had become very relaxed and comfortable in Mercy's house. The type of comfort and stress-free life he had not had over the past few years. This time, once he closes from work, he now had the urge to leave the office and go home to his heartthrob. Before he found love with Mercy, each closing time from the office was like a torture. He therefore developed the habit of visiting and staying in some nightclubs until late in the night. Once he gets home, he goes straight to bed so as to avoid the constant nagging of Tosin. But nowadays, he goes straight home knowing that he was going to find peace. Why would a man not live long? He had always asked nobody in particular. Chike had a cousin who lived a few streets away from his own. This cousin had tried over and over again to settle the matter between Chike and Tosin, but to no avail. He got tired of the whole thing when Tosin was not ready to listen to his sense of wisdom. He had often advised her that life itself is not a sprint, but a marathon. She told her to take things easy and let common sense prevail. But Tosin would not listen. At a point, Tosin turned that she was not interested in any third-party mediation. She had taken a stand and is not going back on her words. As a result, Tony had withdrawn from the mediation efforts. It was this same man that Tosin ran to when she discovered that things have gone out of control. Tony initially refused to intervene again, but after much persuasion and visits from Tosin, Tony decided to get involved once more. But at that point, a lot of waters had passed under the bridge. He had to start looking for Chike. He was told that Chike was somewhere, but he does not know exactly where. It was he that discovered that Chike was not only living with Mercy, but they have had a child together. Hence, the intervention was already late. When the news got to Tosin, she wept. Like she put it, I am weeping, not because of what happened, but because of the character involved. She had always seen Mercy as part of the home. She did not see her only as a family friend, but a sister-in-law. Why Mercy of all people? She lamented. While all this were going on, Chike and Mercy were already planning for a traditional wedding. Ordinarily, weddings like that would have taken place in their hometown. But because of distance and the cost implication, they decided that the marriage ceremony be held here in Lagos. Consent and blessings of the various elders were already being sought. After obtaining the consent and blessings, they will need to communicate their intention to those in the village to give their go-ahead. Without such go-ahead, the marriage cannot hold. That was the tradition. But there was a snag. It was at this point that it was discovered that both Chike and Mercy have some relationship. In the village where they came from, people there were regarded as relations and so cannot intermarry. It was therefore a taboo for them to have any form of relationship, not to talk of having a child in the bargain. Their coming together has produced a child, but it comes with a very heavy burden. This is an abomination which customs and tradition frowns heavily upon. The people at home must not hear this story. It comes with a lot of consequences, but it cannot be hidden. Having heard, you must not hide it, lest the gods of the lands will see you as an accomplice and enter the same judgment against you as they will do the main offender. This is beyond what the people in Lagos can handle. The news must be communicated to them in the village for quick action. One cannot see their child eating in the marketplace and keep quiet. It is not done. Bad news flies like wildfire. The village heads, the holders of the traditional stool, have heard the story. They must not waste time. Justice must be dispensed, and quickly too. A meeting was quickly called. Something strange has happened in the land. It is not possible for your naked eyes to see your ears, they said. Later that same evening, the elders sat together and deliberated. Our children have committed a great offense. Chike and Mercy are related. They cannot marry, let alone have a child. The lands have been desecrated, and the offenders have to cleanse it. They have to come with 10 fat mother goats, 5 father goats, 10 kegs of palm wine, and 5 live cocks. Meanwhile, they both stand ostracized, and no one born of the town will have anything to do with them again until they come and please the gods. After which they will now be told of what to do so as not to incur the wrath of the gods. The consequences will be deadly if not handled urgently. Everyone quickly left the scene. Chike and Mercy were quickly informed of the outcome of that meeting. Chike was devastated when he heard the news. What would he do now? He was torn between his love for Mercy and the allegiance he owes to tradition. Please advise Chike in the comment section. Thank you. Please like, comment, and share. Your response will help us improve on our service delivery to you. Thank you once again. Bye.